Personal Magnetism by Hector Durville. Introduction. This work is a treatise on psychic education. It is a bedside book that has its designated place in the palace of the rich man to whom fortune does not grant happiness, as well as in the cottage or garret of the honest worker who aspires to a better condition. Some, to whom effort seems impossible, in whom will is more or less lacking, will feverishly flip through it in the hope of discovering a secret therein, a cabalistic formula having the power to make spring forth instantly, as does the magic wand of a comic opera fairy, the regard and love they lack, the fortune and happiness that flee them. Let those close the book and seek no secret in it, for there is none for them, at least in their current psychic condition. But let them try to understand that the cause of their misfortune lies within themselves and not outside them, that it stems from their character, from the poor orientation of their thoughts, from their incapacity, from their indecision, from their lack of will. Let them also seek to persuade themselves that, barring very rare exceptions, we almost all occupy the social situation we deserve, that we can perfect ourselves, become better, and that with perseverance it is always possible to learn, to make oneself useful, to increase one's energy, and to acquire the qualities lacking to merit a better situation. If they succeed in understanding these incontestable truths, and above all if they are capable of making efforts to seek to emerge from the mire in which they are sinking, let them reopen the book, reread it, study it, and learn its content with the greatest attention. They will find therein, like all those who wish to increase their aptitudes and acquire new ones through well-understood education, the means to develop within themselves the powers, the forces that give intuition, courage, energy, confidence, will, that give birth to sympathy, interest, regard, that ensure love, power, domination, that give and maintain physical and moral health, that make the wheel of fortune turn as one desires, that allow one to foresee future events and even to direct them to a large extent, that give the possibility of accomplishing works that border on the prodigious, etc., etc. They will find therein, finally, the secret of goodness, of virtue, of wisdom, the secret of all secrets, the key to ancient magic. But let us be modest. Let us not demand the possession of all powers, of all the gifts of nature, for we would need too much time to acquire them, and the current existence would certainly be much too short. Let those who occupy, as yet, only the lower rungs of the social ladder content themselves with wishing to improve their situation, to gain the sympathy, confidence, and regard of those around them, to acquire not the fortune that rarely gives happiness but an honest comfort. They can have the most absolute certainty that by following the path traced for them further on, they will obtain appreciable results in a few weeks, in a few months at most, and that then they will be sufficiently encouraged to walk boldly toward the goal they wish to reach. They will transform themselves little by little, and, transforming the environment in which they find themselves, they will not delay in receiving the reward they deserve. They will see, with satisfaction, that the good things they had long desired in vain come to them of their own accord, although they do nothing special to obtain them. This will be the beginning of success, the arrival of luck, perhaps even the start of fortune. In any case, it is happiness announcing itself. From being insignificant, null, even antipathetic and repulsive, one begins to become someone, to be interesting, sympathetic, and attractive. By advancing resolutely in this path one has traced for oneself, despite the pitfalls one will not fail to encounter, one soon becomes conscious that this state of attractive sympathy constitutes a veritable power of attraction, that it strengthens, develops, grows, that it can grow further and even grow forever, that one can do better and better, obtain more and more, and that at a given moment, in a time more or less distant, there will no longer be any goal one cannot reach, no longer any limits one cannot cross. What are the means to employ to develop this attractive sympathy that must direct us toward the goal we wish to reach? These means are quite numerous. They depend, first, on certain physical and moral dispositions, natural or acquired, then on one's character, which one can modify, on the orientation one can give to the current of one's habitual thoughts, and, above all, on the persistence and energy of the will that one can always develop. Some systems of philosophy teach that our character is immutable, that we are born with a destiny we must undergo without great hope of modifying it. It is not so. We can not only modify our character but change it almost completely. We are the almost absolute masters of our destiny. Man possesses, therefore, his free will, although certain philosophers affirm that his destiny is fixed in advance. Fatality obviously governs the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms, as well as the inferior man, in whom the will is not yet developed. Pushed by implacable destiny, the individual of this category is fatally dragged in the direction traced by his previous activities. He is the plaything of all events. But, as soon as man knows how to will, he can vanquish destiny and acquire his free will. He exercises, then, a direct action on the ordinary events of life. And these, instead of overwhelming him as in the past, respond to his desires. This is what made Edgar Poe say, "God, binding nature tightly by destiny, gave liberty to the human will." Indeed, to use a term commonly employed in philosophical language, one often observes the plurality of types within the same individual. Age, illnesses, even circumstances, make natural tendencies disappear and give birth to new ones. By example, by reasoning, one can certainly succeed in making the egoist understand that by renouncing a small advantage, he can realize a greater one. In an analogous way, one can also make the wicked man admit that to cause suffering to another, he imposes a greater one upon himself, and that to not suffer himself, he must renounce, if only as a trial and for a time more or less limited, making others suffer. If this is so, character is not immutable. With attention, reflection, the will that orients the current of thoughts, and with time that modifies everything, one can succeed in changing it almost completely and giving the lie to this proverb, "Drive away nature, and it returns at a gallop." The change obtained, were it only for an instant, continues and asserts itself. And it is sufficiently known that a difficult task is accomplished at first painfully, that it becomes little by little easier, that one ends by getting used to it, and that one accomplishes it subsequently with facility. In any case, let one be well persuaded that in the psychic domain changes and transformations occur like chemical compositions and decompositions, that is to say that, according to Lavoisier's formula, nothing is made from nothing, nothing is lost, and everything is transformed. The slightest effort, the most insignificant act leaves, as we shall see later on, a lasting trace in a real form, and at a more or less distant date, sometimes after only a few days, we receive, as if by a backlash, the harmful effect of our bad thoughts, of our bad actions, just as we receive, just as surely, the just reward for our good thoughts and our good actions. Providence is within us and not outside of us. Nature does not dominate us, but obeys, on the contrary, our impulse, our inner movement. It is merely the field placed at our disposal to cultivate our evolution, and we can harvest from it only what we have sown there. In a word, we fashion our own destiny ourselves. There is no effect without a cause. Chance does not exist, and the greatest number of ordinary life events can be foreseen, for those occurring at this moment are the consequence of those accomplished in the past, just as those that will occur in the future are intimately bound to those currently unfolding. When repeated over a long period, the smallest effects can engender great causes, and we all know that the drop of water that falls always in the same spot ends up hollowing out its hole in the hardest rock. In principle, to create a happy destiny for oneself, each person must first seek the path that suits him best, for we all have special aptitudes. Let him acquire all the knowledge required to be always equal to his task, and let him orient the current of his thoughts toward the goal he wishes to attain. But it is not enough to say with mere lip service, "I will." The will must issue naturally from the deepest recesses of the conscience and be born of a keen desire for success. It must be calm, constant, uniform, so that, without arrogance, but with a noble pride, one has the greatest confidence in one's personal worth, in the efficacy of the means one employs, and in the absolute certainty of success. Not all individuals are capable of willing with energy and perseverance. Calmness and composure at the moment of danger are the indication of a powerful will. In general, nervous and impressionable people, those who become irritated at the slightest provocation, have a weak will, especially when they are stubborn and do not reconsider the determination they have taken in their outburst. But the will of one and all is always susceptible to education and development, and this with all the more facility as they are less stubborn. Thus, to be happy, strong, healthy, to succeed in everything and secure one's destiny, one must exercise a powerful personal influence around oneself, be sympathetic and attractive. This influence is possessed to a greater or lesser degree, naturally and even often without being conscious of it, by leaders of crowds, by religious reformers and others, by great orators and by all those who, from the bottom of the social ladder, rise to the best positions. If these individuals knew the nature and cause of the influence they instinctively exercise over those surrounding them, they could very easily strengthen it, develop it further, and direct it to obtain more important results. This same influence also exists in a very great number of individuals who do not know how to use it at all, for their more or less great qualities are counterbalanced by certain shortcomings, often insignificant, which may even pass for qualities in the eyes of the majority. Finally, it exists in a latent state in all others. The former as well as the latter, if they enjoy the fullness of their intellectual and moral faculties, can learn to use it, develop it, and even make it grow continually. This influence, this personal magnetism, natural or acquired, does not always depend on external appearances. A fine stature, a majestic bearing, a pleasant face, distinguished manners may contribute to it and do contribute to a certain extent. But, let it be well known, there is no body too deformed, no face too ugly, no appearance too puny that cannot harbor it. If beautiful thoughts are set forth in beautiful language, their tendency to impose themselves is only greater. But the purity and nobility of the thoughts play the principal role here, and he who speaks with little eloquence always manages to make himself heard in direct proportion to the elevation of his thoughts and the conviction with which he expresses them. We meet individuals who are very ugly, deformed, who are very sympathetic to us and who evidently exercise upon us an influence capable of disposing us in their favor, while we remain cold, impassive before certain individuals who are beautiful and well-made from a plastic point of view, but who have no expression, who do not impress our inner being. These latter are like beautiful statues which, lacking warmth and magnetism, are but images of life. Napoleon was small, without great education, devoid of the prestige that birth and fortune bestow, but he possessed naturally, to a degree that no one could surpass nor even reach through practice and training, personal magnetism, that influence, that force, elder sister of genius, which allows one to overcome all obstacles, which assures power, provides the means to shake the world, to dispose of empires, and to accomplish gigantic works. Let one simply recall, says a distinguished personalist whom I shall cite several times, his triumphal march across France, after the escape from the Isle of Elba, and the irresistible sovereignty he exercised, then over the crowd. Peasants, nobles, and bourgeois rushed into his path, attracted as if by a mysterious force, and under the sway of the charm, 1,000,000 human chests uttered the formidable cry, immortalized by history. Long live the emperor! When one possesses it consciously and it is developed, personal magnetism constitutes the most precious and durable of all assets. It is worth more than science, for it is the science of sciences. It is 100 times preferable to the most well-established fortune, for the latter can sink overnight in clumsy speculations. With it, the most modest person can, always, have the certainty of becoming better, of advantageously preparing his future and the future of his kin, of living, always in honest comfort surrounded by the regard of all, of enjoying good physical and moral health which he will transmit to his descendants. In short, of possessing happiness in its most varied forms. He who has ambitions, however great they may be, who covets love, who wants fortune or any other advantage can have the same certainty of obtaining it, especially if this in no way harms the property of others. With personal magnetism, everything is complete, everything is certain, everything is durable. Without it, on the contrary, nothing is stable, nothing is perfect. It is in everything and everywhere the direct cause of success, the exponent and the expression of power. It is within the reach of all. This work enables everyone to develop it further if they already possess it, or to acquire and develop it if it exists within them only in a latent state. But the results will not be identical for all, for one must reckon with the natural dispositions of each individual. There are a certain number of privileged individuals who will understand all the details of the teaching, even before having completely read the work. They will set themselves to practice and will immediately derive the greatest advantages from it. Others, and this will be the majority, will reread it and understand certain affirmations they had not grasped at first. Then, by practicing, they will obtain very satisfactory results within the space of 1 to 2 months. Finally, a very small number, those who live in indolence and who dread effort, will find it, at first, beyond their strength and their means of action. They will reread it 3 or 4 times to become thoroughly imbued with it, and at a given moment, a glimmer of hope will appear to them. They will understand, then, that by willing they are capable of some efforts. They will try timidly. With hope, courage will come little by little, and they will manage to obtain, after a more or less long time, 3 months, 6 months perhaps, satisfactory results, and the game will be won. After a first success, the task will become easier and easier, and it will only remain, for the former as for the latter, to persevere in order to considerably increase the initial results. To conclude this introduction, already long but certainly necessary, I add that the work is divided into 2 parts. A theoretical study which exposes the psychic laws as well as the manifestations of thought and will. A practical, demonstrative, experimental study which teaches the means to become master of one's thoughts, to develop and strengthen one's will, to employ all one's means of action to arrive at the goal of one's desires. Chapter 1. General Considerations. Personal magnetism permits man as well as woman to attract the consideration, the confidence, the sympathy, and the love of their fellows, to obtain the best situations and to arrive easily at happiness and fortune, or, at the very least, at the well-being that we all desire. It puts us immediately in contact with the energies that surround us, with the sympathies that float in the atmosphere, and allows us to fix them to develop and perfect our individuality. It is this which gives the magnetizer the power to effect, even at a distance, extraordinary cures. To the artist, the inventor, the industrialist, the merchant, the faculty of completely realizing their ideal. Thus defined, personal magnetism is synonymous with power, potency, or personal influence. Physical magnetism, renovated by Mesmer at the end of the 18th century, and personal magnetism can be compared to the magnet, for their properties present certain analogies. Subject both one and the other to the laws of polarity, they radiate around us and act upon those who surround us. The first depends on the material body. The second is a property of the psychic elements which animate us. It is a manifestation of the faculties of the soul. Considerably more subtle and powerful, personal magnetism does better and faster all that the other can do. Its principal characteristic is to attract toward him who possesses it to a certain degree the good things of life and to repel the bad, without doing anything whatsoever for that. The sources of personal magnetism. The various authors who, for 30 to 35 years, have treated the means of developing personal power when one is deprived of it or increasing it when one possesses it to a certain degree, are not absolutely in agreement. Some affirm that it is everywhere in nature, and that, by respiration practiced according to certain rules, everyone can take it from the ambient air. Others seek to demonstrate that it is due to a certain exchange occurring from one brain to another, and that one can take it from muscular force. For some, it pertains, above all, to vegetarianism, to chastity, to asceticism, to the will. In all these theories, there is a large share of truth, but none of them contains it completely. The manner of breathing, dietary hygiene, and the fact of clumsily squandering one's forces in sexual pleasures too often repeated play, certainly, a considerable role from the point of view of physical, intellectual, and moral health. The will is indispensable, but what is worth even more is thought suitably expressed, the accomplishment of good actions, and the practice of virtues. Personal power is within us and not outside of us. It is the pure and simple manifestation of our psychic force arrived at a relatively high degree. It is in direct relation with our intellectual and moral faculties, which themselves pertain to our evolution. Therefore, by cultivating our faculties suitably, we perfect ourselves and we evolve. It exists naturally in a certain number of individuals who impose themselves on general attention, who are happy and healthy, who easily arrive at the goal of their desires and succeed in everything. All others can develop it, for it is in a latent state in each of us. I wish to pay homage to 3 authors who have inspired me and whom I cite frequently in the course of this work. First is Prentice Mulford, the precursor of the doctrine which rapidly spread in the United States under the name of New Thought, Mental Culture, or Psychic Culture. Then William Walker Atkinson, who followed him closely, and Victor Turnbull, who attributes personal power to a particular force acting by attraction and repulsion like the magnet and electricity. This force manifests itself in the form of mental currents analogous to electric currents, which go almost constantly from one brain to another, and the most influential are those who know how to store within themselves, in a sort of reserve battery, the greatest sum of force which belongs to them as their own or which they draw from others. Although this theory seems to me to resolve only certain sides of the question, the theory of mental currents deserves to be taken into consideration. The psychic laws. In the physical world, harmony results from the law of contraries. The effects of the magnet and of electricity constitute the most apparent type of the application of this law. Poles or fluids of the same name repel each other. Poles or fluids of contrary names attract each other. It is the same for human magnetism, which is but a property, but a movement of matter, as I explain in my magnetic physics. The psychic laws are inverse. It is likes that attract and contraries that repel. One can formulate them thus. Thoughts and actions of the same nature attract each other and give birth to or increase the consideration, the sympathy, the confidence, and the love that individuals are susceptible to having for one another. Thoughts and actions of opposite nature repel each other and give rise to antipathy, mistrust, and hatred. Our thoughts can be considered as material bodies, and, as such, outside of these physico-psychic laws, they are, furthermore, subject to chemical laws analogous to those which preside over the composition and decomposition of bodies that fall under our senses. Thus, they communicate and exchange themselves, going continually from one individual to another without our being conscious of it. And when they are of the same nature without being identically similar, they have a sort of affinity for one another which allows them to combine to form new thoughts, ideas, and dispositions. This is what explains our change of opinion after having listened passively to a lecturer or a sympathetic friend treating any subject whatsoever which is not entirely familiar to us. This is what explains, also, the modification of our needs, our desires, our inclinations, when we constantly associate with an individual or a group of individuals who think and act in a manner different from our own. This long-accepted truth has given rise to this proverb, "Bad company corrupts good morals." To develop personal influence, all physical means prescribed by hygiene to increase and regularize physical strength are good, especially if they are also employed to increase the energy of the will and to gain self-mastery. One must strive to free oneself from any feeling of selfishness, to do good and avoid evil, and, above all, learn how to think. Know that nothing is lost, that nothing is insignificant in life, and that our seemingly simplest thoughts influence us as well as those around us, and that they are the direct cause of our happiness or our unhappiness. The thoughts we emit with persistence attach themselves to us, attract others of the same nature, and form around us a kind of atmosphere, an aura more or less dense, more or less extensive, which constitutes an element of our personality. From this atmosphere, extensions radiate around us which may be compared to electric currents, or better still, to the lines of force observed around magnets, as shown by the magnetic phantom. Thus, if we emit thoughts of goodness and benevolence, we attract similar thoughts from without and gain, at the same time, the confidence and sympathy of those who are good and benevolent. Whereas if we think only of persecution, hatred, vengeance, and jealousy, we attract thoughts of this nature which come to maintain and even enlarge our aura. And, while driving away those who could be useful to us, we attract maniacs, the obsessed, the jealous, the wicked, and the hot-tempered, which amply justifies this proverb, "Birds of a feather flock together." It is thus that we are likable or unlikable, that we make ourselves happy or unhappy, that we make the wheel of fortune turn for or against us. In a word, that we create our own destiny. Ask, and it shall be given you. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you, the Gospel tells us. These affirmations are absolutely accurate in this sense. Place yourself in the conditions required for this, that is to say, believe in the possibility of obtaining what you ask for and will to obtain it as something due to you, and you can have absolute certainty that, if this does not in any way harm the standing and interest of your fellow men, you will obtain, if not everything you asked for, at least a quantity proportional to the sincerity of your request and the sum of will you have expended in order to obtain it. Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.